Hey warrior, welcome to today's video. Today's day 3 of the 7-day intro to food freedom. Yes, I got it. It's really hard for me to remember that for some reason. Today we're talking about 3 things to expect during binge eating recovery. Now I told you I was going to keep it real with you. So these 3 things are probably things that you don't want to hear so much. I promise I have like 3 coming in the next few days. I have some like stuff really good to look forward to about recovery. But today I wanted no sugarcoating. I wanted no BS. I just wanted to give you the real deal. 3 things to expect during binge recovery. Because the cool thing is when we can expect it, then we can plan for it and then we can help ourselves through it instead of just thinking like, oh my gosh, this is hitting me out of left field, didn't even see it coming, and I don't know what to do about it. So I'm gonna start right off the bat with a big one. Take a breath. First one, stop dieting. Okay, before you turn off the video, just hear me out. Binge eating recovery is a different mentality than weight loss, than trying to get ourselves to eat all the healthy things and to lose weight or change our aesthetic. I know that this is a big concern for you, and it was for me too when I was at my lowest, like mentally. I had gained over 30 pounds in a matter of months, and I didn't recognize myself on the outside or the inside. And the more that I tried so desperately to lose that 30 pounds because of all the reasons why, you would probably relate to that same feeling. I felt uncomfortable in my skin. I didn't want to go out. I felt heavier and more lethargic. I didn't want to wear any clothes. I didn't want to buy new clothes. I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. Everything felt harder, including just moving around day to day. And honestly, I was really embarrassed because I was a nutritionist and a personal trainer who is supposed to look a certain way, supposed to keep her shit together, and I felt like I couldn't do that and I was a total fraud. So there was a lot of internal stuff with that as well. But the more I tried to control the restriction of the food and the dieting, and my only goal was weight loss. I have to lose the weight. I have to get my food under control. I have to restriction. The worse my binge eating habit got, straight off the bat. And if this is not just me, if you ask anyone who struggled with binge eating, I would pretty much guarantee that they will share the same experience. So, binge eating recovery is not about finding the right diet that you can stick with, okay? It isn't about controlling what you eat so that you don't eat out of control, right? It's actually the opposite. It's about releasing restrictions in our mind about food. Sorry, I lost my notes. So it's about releasing these restrictions that you have put on your body, on your mind, what you can and can't do, out of the fear that you are going to overdo it, or out of the fear that you are going to binge eat, or out of the fear that you are going to gain weight, out of the fear that you are going to just spiral down, losing more and more control, and you won't be able to stop yourself, out of the fear of weight loss or weight gain, and out of the fear of eating out of control, right? I know that this is crazy and maybe it sounds counterintuitive, and you might be thinking like, if I let go of my diet, my control, my rules, I won't be able to control myself. I will be balls to the wall, like binge eating every single day. And that is my worst fear. Or maybe you're already at that point. So it's okay, first of all, to have these fears. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel really resistant to it. You may even get pissed at me for saying this. You may be like, that worked for her, but it's not going to work for me. And fair. Not everything that works for me is going to work for you. I get it. My statement that I like to say is, and I didn't come up with this, but I like this phrase. You can have anything as long as it doesn't have you. So my question is, does food have you? Does the fear of weight gain have you? Does the fear of losing control have you? Are you in control of your food, or does your food have control of you? So you're thinking this because your brain is operating from the perspective that it's been operating from probably for a long, long time, and that is that you cannot trust your body. Your body doesn't know, but your mind does, or that diet does, or what your neighbor did next door that worked for her. That's what's best for you. But what your body is telling you, the messages that it's sharing with you, doesn't count. Doesn't know what it's talking about. I don't trust when I'm hungry. I don't trust when I'm full. I don't trust that I can interpret and give my body what it needs, even if that is something that is not food. So this is a process, and it's a process of coming back into a relationship with your body, into a relationship with food. And the number one key of a great relationship is communication, listening, being able to stop, be still, and listen to what the other person, or in this case, the body on the other side of the conversation, is telling you that it needs. The second thing that you are going to experience in binge eating recovery is, we'll call it mind the gap, or slowing down and becoming aware of your thoughts. All of them. All of them, yes. Being aware. Not necessarily listening, but becoming aware. So I spoke in yesterday's video, and by the way, if you haven't seen yesterday's video, just sign up for, using the link in my bio for the 7-day intro to food freedom. It's completely free, and you'll get the email and you'll get the link to yesterday's video. So definitely go do that if you haven't already. So in yesterday's video, I spoke about this gap between you experiencing your binge urge and actually acting on the urge by binge eating. There's this gap. And right now it may feel very much like a very thin line, right? You may not be able to see any space between the urge and the action of binge eating. But what we are going to work on doing in my course is opening up that space so that you can see, feel, and experience that there is a space there first and foremost, and that you have options there. You have choice inside of that gap. So the thoughts are real, but that doesn't mean that they are all true. And we tend to believe our thoughts as facts, but the actual truth is our beliefs drive our thoughts. And our thoughts then create our feelings and emotions. And most of our thoughts are happening because of habit. Yeah, just because we habitually think these same things. Like if you think about the things that you tell yourself on a regular basis, how often do you find yourself repeating that to yourself? So your diet rules, your let's say like regulations that you have on what you can and can't eat, what you should and shouldn't eat, what a healthy diet looks like that you must follow in order to be considered healthy, the beliefs that you have about yourself and recovery and what progress looks like, your behaviors with food, the beliefs that you have about what your body looks like and how you're showing up in the world are all one perspective that you are looking at your life through a certain filter. Call it poop color glasses, because if you're watching this, it's probably not the best color to be filtering life through, right? We got rose colored glasses, but we're not wearing those, okay? We're wearing like the puce colored glasses. That's just the ones that we're choosing. So I had this analogy, and it's quite long, so I'm gonna just include it in the email, but I'm gonna try my best to just break it down and have it be succinct. So slowing down is a huge part of this process. I know that binge urges, I describe them as, and I hear most people describe them as urgent, chaotic, this anxious energy that is just radiating through your body and you are so uncomfortable and everything feels really just like on fast forward. Like even the binge eating itself is on fast forward. It happens fast. You're not really knowing what you're doing. It's obviously very mindless. And sometimes it's just like this inhalation of food. It's certain, I don't think any of us would say a binge is a very calm, mindful, savoring experience. It's not really a joyous experience. It's kind of like just a disconnecting, trying to not feel anything experience. That's how I would describe it anyway. So a big part of this process is slowing down, is bringing awareness inside of moving slower, inside of choosing to perceive your thoughts, not be so pulled into them, because we know that they are like a vacuum. And if they pull us in, we're going to get pulled into that vortex and spin all over the place. But if we can use that gap to step outside before we get pulled into that vortex, or even when we're inside of that spiraling vortex, step outside of it and observe what we're thinking, we have choice there. And that's the difference between just being totally swept up in the lower brain and not giving the higher brain, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain that makes the decisions, that chooses the goals and the dreams and the things that we do truly want for ourselves, even has control over the voluntary movement of our limbs to get up and do something. So there's that gap. And since our thoughts are habitual, oh, sorry, wrong spot. So my question is eating always the solution to getting rid of a binge urge? Is it even guaranteed to get rid of that urge, that anxiety? Is binge eating guaranteed to get rid of it? What if you're just doing something to soothe you through this uncomfortable urge, this anxiety wave? What if we stopped labeling it binge urge? And what if we took off the word binge and we just called it an urge or anxiety, this wave, right? This wave of discomforting energy. What if binge eating was just your go-to habit for when you experience this uncomfortable wave of energy? So I would argue that binge eating actually doesn't always get rid of the feeling. Honestly, like I've had binges where I will continue to binge because that energy is still there. Like it's not gone. And even if the food that I have bought for a binge, I had eaten through it, if I was still feeling that momentum, that energy, I would go right into the kitchen to get some more food. You know, it's like, does it actually even help release the anxiety? Obviously, at some point, you're going to just stop, and it'll feel like you'll feel that exhaustion, you'll feel that lethargy, you'll feel that guilt and that shame start to set in. And everyone has their own sort of point when that happens. It's not like, 2 hours in, turns off. It doesn't work that way. So everyone's relative here. But what if you're just associating with eating with this discomforting energy that is just what an impulse is? The action, the urge quencher, could literally be anything that soothes you. Like you have just been choosing food, right? We've just been choosing to go to food, which biologically does give us a little dopamine boost and does give us a serotonin boost while we are eating, and it does feel good, so it does help. But the action of it is just ingraining the reward center of the brain to just, on a deeper level, just drive this habit into us further and further. So I made the correlation that like other addictions, other very highly sensitive things that spike the reward center in our brain in the instant gratification like mode over here, they all do that same thing, right? Like I have friends who are recovered addicts of all different types, like the drug and alcohol type and also the like non-drug and alcohol type, I guess we'll call it. And they experience urges, and they're not chemically driven urges. They are urges based on whatever it is that is triggering that discomforting feeling, right? So I started to think about this, and like, what if you could reteach yourself to stop the habit of using food as being your release, but what if you could learn to associate something else with this discomforting, anxious urge feeling to help soothe it? What if you instead had, I'm just going to throw out some examples, and these are some things that we do in the warrior evolution, but what if you were able to legit, every time you felt that instant urge, that discomfort in your body, like the I can't stop thinking about food thoughts, what if your gap was a breathing practice? A solid breathing practice that literally got you through that urgent impulse. What if you instead had a movement practice? And I'm not talking about like go to the gym, but like just a special movement practice that you do to get that energy out of your body until you work through that urge. Because we all know those urges do not last forever. They, just like a wave, they crest and then they come down, all right? What if you utilize something like a tapping technique? If you've ever heard of EFT, emotional freedom technique, it's tapping on different meridian lines of the body, works similar to acupressure. It is incredible with anxiety and binge eating specifically. So what if you created something like this for yourself to help you through these anxious urge feelings? The gap between the urge and the action, you have a choice. Like I said, right now it may feel very small and it may feel like you have no choice at all and it's just urge, act. And it might not, and that's because you haven't practiced the first step, which is separating the urge feeling and those thoughts that are driven by that urge from yourself. Seeing you have the power and you have the control, not the urge. The urge can't take over your limbs and make you get up and start eating. The urge can't do that. The choice comes from, like I said, our prefrontal cortex, which may need some strengthening as we decrease this ingrained association from the reward center of the brain that we need to binge to get rid of this urge. The only reason you binge is because you have a binge urge. The only reason that you do the instant gratification thing to get rid of the uncomfortable energy is because you experience the uncomfortable energy. So if we can't do anything about, we are gonna do things to decrease the intensity and the frequency of the uncomfortable energy, but we can also do something about the after. So what we are gonna do inside of the warrior evolution eventually is to actually work on you trying out many different techniques of how to first create the gap and then input something that works for you. What works for me may not work for you, but I am here to help guide you to what does work for you. Personally, for me, changing my environment that I'm in really helps. So like if I'm sitting in the same spot and I'm experiencing those binge urges, just acknowledging that it's happening and then getting up and moving to a different part of the house, going outside, involving myself in a different activity that I can intentionally kind of go to that definitely soothes me, definitely relaxes me, does not just distract me, is something that works for me. Breathing has become a superpower. And in the warrior workouts, we actually practice diaphragmatic breathing, which is the most relaxing type of breathing that anyone is coached to utilize through anxiety and things like that. So I just call it a superpower because it really is. So there are other techniques, at least 5 other ones that I'm going to show you inside of the warrior evolution. And and it's for you to try on and practice and utilize and have in your toolbox so that you can figure out what is best, that what is going to work for you. All right, this is going to be, I knew this was going to be a long video. Here we go. On to number 3. You will relapse and you will be tempted to run back to your comfort zone, which is just trying to struggle through life by dieting and binge eating and going through that roller coaster. But the first thing that I wanted to mention is you will relapse. You will have binges in recovery, and that is totally okay. It's not about trying to finally not binge and like just go cold turkey. And I know that people like to count the days that they do not binge, and that may serve some people and it also may not. But ultimately, recovery is not linear. You know this. You know this. You've experienced this. You just need to remind yourself of it when you're in the moment. In fact, no change is linear. Nothing goes like this, guys. Nothing in life, maybe whatever this type of triangle goes in math, it happens. In nature, I don't really know when this happens because a lot of it looks like this. Back and then up and then down, and then we go back and we spiral around a few times, and eventually we're making our way up. But that's only because we keep taking steps forward. There's always those small circles that spiral backwards before spiraling upwards again. The measure of progress in binge eating is nuanced. It's not binary. It's not binge or didn't binge. And if I binged, not making progress. That is not true. And I think a lot in our world of all or nothing, we just kind of adapt that into a lot of different things that deserve nuance. But progress in binge eating looks more like awareness and less self-criticism, less frequent binges, less intense binges, shorter binges, stopping yourself in the middle of a binge, stopping yourself before a binge, noticing your triggers leading up to an urge, sitting with a binge urge and not acting on it, not judging yourself for binging, not looking at a whole day as ruined if you do binge, and instead making the most of the rest of the day. All of those are progressive steps. This is not an all or nothing thing. It's certainly not an overnight thing, and it's going to take continued work. I think the biggest help for me was learning to not care, truly not care if I binged. I allowed myself to not beat the crap out of myself. I allowed myself to not put on all of the shame and the guilt. I was already physically feeling pretty damn crappy after a binge. So I allowed myself to not just lather on all of the other stuff that make it that much more emotional, that much more judgmental, that much more traumatic and painful. Because when I did that, it sort of made another mark. It was just see, this is another thing that you can't do. See, this is another example of how you're not going to beat binge eating. And instead of putting all of those emotions and all of those judgments and making it this thing, I was like, all right, this happened. What can I do about it going forward? How can I learn from this? And I would just truly look at it from an objective standpoint. And I would also allow myself to go back to eating normally, what I would usually have for the next meal right after that. Maybe I would listen to my body and it wasn't really that hungry, but I would continue, I would have my next scheduled meal, which was, with our focus, we're trying to fuel our body about every 3 to 4 hours. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it certainly does help with the blood sugar ups and downs that can trigger binge urges. So I like to encourage people to do that inside the program. And it really helps stop making each binge this mark on my progress report. And honestly, that really, really, really helps. So we're going to work a lot on self-judgment and criticism and shifting that. So let me see if there's anything else. So yes, you will still have binges in recovery, but eventually, over time, sometimes 6 months, sometimes less, but sometimes more. It depends on who you are and where you are. Binge eating will no longer be an option for you. That is the ultimate goal. But we are going to celebrate all the wins along the way, warrior. We are going to make sure that you acknowledge your progress, and that the closer and closer you get to having binge eating being no longer an option for you, then you know you're headed into the right direction. So I hope this video was helpful. I know it's a long one, so thanks for sticking with me this long. I really want to hear what you got out of this video. I tried to give you as much value, and there are a lot of other things to expect in binge eating recovery, but this video would be so long if I went through all of them, so I just focused on the 3. So I'm just going to remind you of what those were. The first one is stop dieting. The second one is minding the gap, becoming aware of your thoughts. And the third one is you will relapse and be tempted to run back to your comfort zone. And that is what to expect. And now that you can expect it, you can start to plan and strategize around it. So I just want to let you guys know, in a few days, I'm doing like a full-on class where I'm going to take you through 3 practices that I personally use and now I use to coach my clients in overcoming binge and emotional eating. So this is like a not to be missed class. I'm going to really go into detail. We're going to actually do some practices together that I teach in the Warrior Evolution. And I'm also going to be making like an exciting announcement with a special gift. So you definitely don't want to miss out on the special gift, because like, who doesn't want a special gift? So I'm going to end this here. If you haven't signed up for this 7-day intro to food freedom, link in the bio, or just go to thewarriorevolution.com. It's really easy to remember, and you can sign up. It's totally free all 7 days, and you won't miss anything. So email me, DM me with any questions. I'm always here to help you, and I hope that this video was helpful. Let me know what it was in the comments that stood out to you most. Alright guys, I will see you in tomorrow's video, day 4, and let me just tell you, we are going to talk about how using movement, exercise during binge eating recovery changed my life. Alright, I'll see you then. Bye.